Hong Kong suffered the worst maritime disaster in 4 decades this year when a mid-sea collision off Lamma Island killed 39 people. The tragedy unfolded as the city was celebrating National Day with fireworks over the harbour. What caused the disaster and who was to blame are questions that will only be answered in the year ahead.
While Hong Kong was celebrating National Day with a fireworks display over the harbour, revelers were unaware that a nightmare was playing out in the dark waters off Lamma Island. The Lamma 4 vessel was carrying more than 100 Hong Kong Electric employees, their families and friends, to watch the display when it was caught up in a collision with the Hong Kong and Kowloon ferry catamaran, the Sea Smooth. The Lamma 4 took in too much water too fast and sank quickly following the crash, while the Sea Smooth didn't stop. Nearly 1,000 emergency personnel and police worked frantically in the dark to pluck dozens of people out of the water. It was too late for 39 victims, including 5 children. Tragedy mixed with politics as the deputy director of Beijing's liaison office visited one of the hospitals the victims had been taken to and made an announcement to the media before Chief Executive Yeung. That prompted some politicians to suggest it was blatant interference in Hong Kong's affairs, as the chief executive should have been the person in charge. The Sea Smooth was damaged in the crash and had taken in water by the time it reached the pier. Hong Kong and Kowloon Ferry justified its captain's decision to leave the scene and head to Yeung Ferry Pier, saying he stayed for some time to check the other vessel before heading off to save his own passengers, some of whom were injured as well. 7 crew members of both vessels were arrested on suspicion of endangering people's lives at sea and not fulfilling their duties.
We've come to the suspicion that the crew responsible for manning the 2 vessels has not exercised the care required of them by law to ensure the safety of the vessel that they are navigating, as well as the people on board their vessels. It is on this basis that they've been arrested to assist police inquiry.
The ferry operator's general manager, Nelson Ng, was teary-eyed as he revealed that one of his relatives lost 2 children in the disaster. The city went into 3 days of mourning on the 4th of October, as flags flew at half-mast and people across the city observed 3 minutes of silence. The chief executive shed tears as he led officials in paying their respects to the victims. The tragedy prompted the chief executive to set up a commission of inquiry to establish the cause of the collision. But the government rejected calls by some lawmakers to use a marine court, which would have more powers. Officials said it would be difficult to find judges with experience in dealing with maritime accidents, but the commission could hire qualified experts to help. The chief executive also played down concerns about the safety situation in Victoria Harbour, one of the world's busiest waterways.
This is definitely an isolated incident. The marine territory of Hong Kong is safe.
The Marine Department said more random safety checks on ferries and vessels would be carried out, but pointed out the 2 involved in the crash had been inspected.
We have carried out enough inspections for those ferry vessels. Maybe there's room for improvement for carrying out random check to improve the situations. In the wake of this accident, I agree that we should step up the random check frequency.
But officials rejected calls to make it mandatory for infants to wear life jackets on ferries. The Commission of Inquiry held hearings this month, tasked with finding out what went wrong and making recommendations to improve maritime safety, but not ruling on any criminal or civil liability. Survivors on board the Lamma 4 told the inquiry they recalled the vessel slowing down before the crash, but said the crew did not make any announcements. Experts said that although both captains had failed to take evasive action to avoid the collision, the captain steering the Hong Kong and Kowloon ferry-owned vessel had made a wrong turn at the last minute and was mostly to blame. They also told the inquiry that while the captain of the Lamma 4 was a reliable witness, the captain of the Sea Smooth did not even give a statement to police. Only one of the Sea Smooth crewmen gave an account to police, while the 3 others, including the captain, refused to cooperate.
There was a public backlash on a massive scale this year after the government started pushing ahead with making national education a compulsory subject to be taught in schools by 2015. Students, teachers and parents laid siege to government headquarters at Tamar with such determination that they brought the administration to its knees.
One teenage student taught the government a lesson this year on underestimating public sentiment. A previously unknown teenager, Joshua Wong of the student concern group Scholarism, was able to organize an unprecedented siege of government headquarters at Tamar that forced Chief Executive Yeung to make a humiliating climb down on the controversial subject of national education. Days after taking office in July, Education Secretary Edna quickly found himself in the hot seat after a government-funded handbook published by a national education advisory body drew widespread controversy for its biased teaching suggestions. Critics argued that the booklet's contents were a distortion of the truth, as they praised China's ruling Communist Party and denounced Western politics. The education minister admitted the booklet needed to be reviewed, but insisted the government would push ahead with its plans to make national education a compulsory subject in schools. The chief executive also stuck to his guns about having the subject taught in schools, underestimating a growing mass movement prompted by fears that children would be brainwashed. The Catholic Church refused to comply with the government's calls to roll out the syllabus by September, while a coalition of students, teachers, and parents demanded the scrapping of the subject altogether. At the center of this movement was young Joshua Wong and his friends, who unlocked the power of social media to mobilize mass support for their cause. At the end of July, tens of thousands took to the streets, bringing traffic in downtown Causeway Bay to a standstill. The education minister fueled further anger by claiming that the silent majority supported the government's plans.
The only thing is, so the majority, silent majority say, well, I support it, we are doing it, we are preparing for this one. But a small group of people pick this particular area, express a lot of distrust because of one or two unfortunate incidents.
The government tried to pacify critics by setting up an advisory committee headed by Executive Councillor Anna Wu to decide on the best way forward. That wasn't good enough for Scholarism, as 3 of its members began a hunger strike outside government headquarters at the end of August, with more people joining the fast in the following days. Many camped outside government headquarters in the heat, while many more turned up to support them and lay siege to the building. Alarmed by the size of the movement and worried that pro-government parties would be punished by voters in September's legislative elections, the chief executive cut short an overseas trip to handle the crisis. In a major U-turn, he announced on the eve of the polls that schools could decide for themselves if they wanted to teach national education by the original deadline of 2015, and promised no one would be forced. There was another climb down 1 month later, when Leung's government announced that the controversial guidelines would also be scrapped. But opponents have vowed to fight on until the whole subject is ditched altogether.
And that brings us to the end of this part of the program, our look back at the year in Hong Kong. Hailing Chen will be here after the break with a review of what happened in China and the rest of the world. From me, Yonden Lhatoo, it's good night and all the best for a great new year. Thanks for watching.